Okay, so this is stage one of making a silicone umbilical cord. So what I have here is Super Sculpey. So this is the sculpting material that is available to me in my local store. So I don't have a lot of tools and equipment. I don't use much. So I actually have a pair of artist's tweezers. They're not medical ones, those ones are actually artist tweezers. And then one of these, which has the two ends on it. So typically that's all I actually use. So you can see in here, this is my Super Sculpey, so this stuff's all pliable, so unset. And then from that I've gone and made this. So this is the umbilical cord that I've made. So when it comes to casting it, so you can then make basically an impression of it, you do need to have a little bit on the end so you can make it stand up, for instance, so you've got something to anchor it down with clay. So ultimately that's where it'll end, through there, and I've just got this extra bit on the end. So this is still all pliable, you can see that I can still move it. So I've done this end as well. So I didn't want, I wasn't making a very long one. So something just nice and short, and then I'll probably put the umbilical clamp over it, and I dug out some grooves and then I've given it a bit of a twist. So I'm about to go ahead and bake that, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, so this is the next stage. So my little umbilical cord that I have made, it's now set, been in the oven, it's all cooled off, and while that's happened I've gone and made myself a little box to make a silicone impression, which will be similar to something like this when it's done. This was a little tongue that I made a while ago, but it'll be something like that when it's done. So it was just a used crackers box because I didn't have any a foam core at the moment. So now what I'm going to do, so I've just taped it together. Then of course if you don't seal everything up, all the silicone will leak out. So I have here some sulfur-free clay. You need the sulfur-free variety, and I've just popped it into the microwave for a few minutes. Just do it on little increments to make it nice and pliable. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to seal up all these edges on the inside. So that's the next step. So this is the next stage. What I have done is sealed up all my little box. So you can see down the sides there I've rubbed the sulfur-free clay down the sides, and I've also put a few corners on this. You'll find that the silicone can seep out anywhere. I've learnt the hard way, so I've really tried to seal everything up. Typically, if you're using a bigger mould and you had that down, so say if it came out to here, you'd actually put a layer on the inside as well, on the base, sealing it all up, but I can't do that because of how narrow this is. And you know, if you've got the money, great, go for it and make big moulds, but I don't have the money and the silicone is quite expensive, so I try and make the smallest mould possible. And what I also noticed was my box was originally about out to here. It was a bit long, so I just cut it and moved it along and retaped it, and then sealed it down the middle bit there as well. What I've also done is I've also mounted my umbilical cord on my base. Now you see that I've mounted it at a bit of an angle. That's to avoid what's called undercuts. So if I tip this over, and that is flat there, it's preventing down the bottom here. Basically, if you can imagine this curling up too much, and then when you fill this with silicone, it basically creates an airlock at this end, because this end will come up higher, if that makes sense. If you need more info on undercuts, I'd suggest going to Brick in the Yard. They have their YouTube channel, and they explain that really well. So that's secure on there, and then that's going to sit over it like that. So I'm going to look down, and you can see that there's space all the way around my item. And so now what I'm going to do is get my hot glue gun, and I'm going to completely seal up all the way around the edge here with hot glue gun. Now you'll notice that I'm using an ice cream lid. I used to use, I've got one here. Clipboards, and that's what this is. But you see, after heaps and heaps of casts, you end up with chunks of silicone on there, and I've tried cutting it all off, and after a while it just gets too much. So I've gone to more of a disposable method, few uses, and then you can throw it out. Alrighty, so that's that stage. Okay, so this is the next stage. So what I've now done is I have hot glued my mould, so it's all sealed up so that the pinky seal won't come out the bottom. So there's my sculpt inside. Now before I attached it, what I did was I Vaselined up, you can see it's a bit glossy, some of the inside of the box, and then the sculpt itself, just a bit of a light oiling, and that just prevents any of this from sticking, and also makes for easier extraction as well. So what I'm now going to do is use Pinky Seal. Pinky Seal is also the same as Moldstar 15, or the Moldstar range. After its properties, there its properties. So it's a 1:1, very low viscosity, has a pot life of 6 minutes and cures in 20 minutes, so demold time in 20 minutes. So I'm going to mix those two together and then just simply pour it in, just like that. Okay, so this is now the mold set. So unfortunately it's nighttime now and I don't have great lighting, but you can see it's all set in there. So I can peer in there with a bit of light we've got, and I can press it, and also it will pull away from the walls. Unfortunately the light's not very good. So I'm going to pull the cardboard apart and then show you what it looks like before I cut it. Okay, so now it's out of the cardboard mould, and what I like to do is I like to try and save as much clay as possible, so stuff that isn't tainted. So that stuff is basically what I've just peeled off the outside of this, and I've also taken out the clay stopper that we made, which affixed it upside down. So that's now what I have. Now the reason why I like to use Pinky Seal, and same again with the Moldstar, is it degasses. So there are actually no bubbles in this. The only bubbles that form, and at night we probably won't be able to see them. No, camera's not really going to pick it up. There's tiny little ones across the top there, but that's it. So everything else degasses really well. Okay, so now the trick is to get my sculpt out of there, and it does involve a cut. Now I know that mine curves around to here, and for me the best way to get it out is going to be making an incision through here. I like to try and not break my sculpts, so I'll cut a little bit and then see whether it pulls out, and then cut a little bit more and see whether it pulls out, and I'll just do it bit by bit like that. Okay, so now I've got my little umbilical cord sculpt out, so it's all intact, and then this, you can look down into it, and then I've got the slice that goes down the side there. So I'll show you what to do, but when I go to put the silicone in this, but basically if you just put a few not too tight rubber bands around there, it keeps it all together because of the type of silicone it is. So unfortunately there was a little bit of wastage with this one, and that's this corner. If I had some more time I may have built it up so not to waste it, but overall this only used 150 mils of Pinky Still, so it didn't use a great deal. So that's that, and now I will go ahead and try and do a casting of this. Okay, so this is the next stage. I forgot to film it while it was still in there, but here is my silicone umbilical cord, so it's actually really flexible. So that's just been pulled straight out of the mold, though perforation down the side, and then I just had the rubber bands around the top. You line all that up properly, and then you put the rubber bands around and it holds it all together. So what I did in my little mixie cup, so it has the leftover flat cylinder, so it's actually the same as this, it's all set. What I did was I just mixed a little bit up. I actually mixed up a little bit too much. You can see there's what, 5 or so mils, yep, 5 mils left in the bottom of that. So I only used, I think, 10 or so mils to do this, but what I used, because it's available in my local store, is the Platzl Gel 10. So they're all its specs. It has a 6-minute working time, 30-minute demold, and it's a 0030. So I believe this is the same density as the EcoFlex 30s. Anyway, so I put some in the cup. I put part B in first, and then I colour part B, and I have a set of Silpig pigment colours. So I used a little bit of white and a touch of yellow to get that yellowy tinge. Mix it up. I also add retarder. It just gives me a little bit more working time. The gel that I use isn't self-degassing, so I've got to try and burp out the bubbles, and a way of stirring it into the side so you actually get less bubbles. And I also added, because I want that really floppy nature, deadener as well, which makes it super soft. So this is supposed to be used with Gel 10, which is the gauge harder than this one. But I used it with this to make it really floppy. So I mixed it all up, added part A, popped it in there, and then it's set, and this is what I have. So my next step now is to colour it, so that's what I'm going to do with my Silpig paints.